It is Friday, June 14th. Let's talk PlayStation. Welcome back, everyone, to another Sly episode of LTPS. It's been another very busy week in the PlayStation landscape. There's a lot going on, so let's begin, as always, with our PS Plus reminder. The June PS Plus Essential lineup still live on PSN, so make sure you claim those games before they go away. Also, this coming Tuesday on the 18th, we have the PS Plus Extra and Premium lineup going live as well, which this is the proper June lineup, so we did have some bonus titles go live as part of the Days of Play promotion, but this is the actual June lineup. So for PS Plus Extra, we have Monster Hunter Rise, and that is most certainly the headline title this month because everything else is kind of not too great. I mean, they're not bad games, but just as far as Extra has gone the past 2 years, I would say this is a very weak month. We've got the two Lego games on there, so The Hobbit and The Incredibles. I mean, those are always fun, but and certainly timely with the announcement of Lego Horizon Adventures. But yeah, I mean, you've got the Lego games on there, Far Cry 4, not Far Cry 5, After Us, Anno 1800. So it's just, it's a very weak lineup this month. I would actually argue PS Plus Premium, despite the lower amount of titles, is honestly a bit better this time around. So certainly if you have PSVR 2, because that seems to be a new trend now, Kayak VR Mirage for PSVR 2 is in the PS Plus Premium lineup. So good to see that we now have a slightly better value proposition for that tier if you've got PSVR 2. Also Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy for PSP, and then Daxter for PSP. So happy about that one. That means we have every single Jak and Daxter game on PS4, PS5 now with trophies, and I love that game so much. I've been dying to replay that again, so happy to do it on modern hardware. And then also our fourth brand new PlayStation 2 game on the updated emulator, Ghost Hunter for PS2. So also good to see that we have more PS2 games finally coming out, because that's a good segue into our first news story, which is the new PS2 games are finally live on PSN, that being Sly Cooper, Tomb Raider Legend, and Star Wars. We did look at these games yesterday as part of a separate upload, which a lot of you probably saw already, or that was on Wednesday, I should say. But yeah, that's something where I didn't look at Star Wars. I'm not really much of a Star Wars person, but so far the new emulator seems serviceable. As I said, it could absolutely be better, but we now know that we have those games live on PSN, and then also Ghost Hunter coming soon as well, which Ghost Hunter is pretty cool because that is, I would say, a surprise. That's certainly a more niche Sony property, that one being from SE Cambridge back in the day, so that's kind of what we were getting at with the expectations for PS2 games. We are going to see them heavily lean on Sony IP first, and then third party, we have to just set expectations in terms of who's going to actually allow their games to come back through this program. But so far, I would say so good, but it's like fine for now. I just hope we see more games compared to the rollout that we've had so far. The other good news here we can mention for a separate news story is that Implicit Conversions seemingly is allowed to add trophies to third-party games now. Not sure if that was like a resource thing from their point of view, or if third parties didn't want to do it, or whatever the case is, but recent patches went out for a number of existing third-party games from the Classics program. So now there's trophy lists for Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, Alone in the Dark on PS1, also Oddworld Abe's Exodus, PS1, so that's great to see as well. It seems like there's maybe a bit of a hit list going on where they're really going back and making sure that there's trophy lists for a lot of these games, so would love to see that for the remainder of the titles that are available right now. Moving on to our next news story, we have a new PS5 system software update, this one being 24.04, 9.40, and this one has a few changes in there, but one is a lot more important than the other. So the entire changelog does say that child accounts can now link and add third-party services and apps to their PSN account, which also means there's now new parental controls that allow you to manage those linked accounts to your child's profile. There's also new software updates for the Pulse Elite, Pulse Explorer, and the PlayStation Link USB adapter. They've also improved the adapter's stability. They've fixed an issue with the Pulse Elite that caused the power to turn off when the audio cable is connected to the audio input jack, and they've also made the status indicator on the Pulse Elite less bright when establishing a PlayStation Link connection. But The more important thing here is they've also prepared the console for joining or starting Discord calls directly from the control center without having to use a PC or the mobile app. So now there's going to be a Discord icon in GameBase, and then you can choose the server or DM group that you'd like to join, and you can just hop right into a call, as long as you've linked your account, of course, and start talking and chatting with your friends that way. So the one caveat being that right now they're actually rolling this out in the coming weeks. So first, that's going to be with Japan and Asia, then Europe, then Australia and New Zealand, then the Middle East, and then finally the Americas. Also, if you remember from a month or two ago, they announced new ways to generate shareable links to your profile from the console and the mobile app. That is also going to roll out in the next week or so as well, which we can also mention on the changelog. There's also improving stability and readability and usability on some screens. It's always there. But yeah, bar none, the best thing about this update is the Discord integration right on the console, because as I'm sure most people would agree, it was completely, I don't want to say useless. I'm sure some people were using the Discord integration by using the mobile app or PC to set up a call, then take it to the console, but it's like too much friction. It just, the second you have to do that, it completely cripples the feature in my opinion. So having it right on the console, I mean, I think that makes it so much more accessible and usable, especially for the console environment, which does have this disconnect between something that is so socially acceptable and used nowadays, which is Discord. So it really does make it so much more user-friendly for people to actually continue using Discord and chatting on PS5, and certainly that promotes more healthy cross-platform play, and it's just, that's how it needed to be. So I'm glad we're finally there. I imagine we'll probably have this roll out to everybody within like a month and a half, 2 months, which would be great, of course. Next up, let's talk about PlayStation Stars, that being Sony's rewards program that they launched last year. And right now it's completely down. It's been down for going on a week at this point. The icon is completely missing on the PlayStation mobile app, so people can't use it. And the problem is that this was during the Days of Play promotion, so it's been down for like, again, nearly a week. So this was happening right in the middle of the promotion, which is a time where people are incentivized to spend money, collect coins, redeem those coins for PSN wallet funds, and they could not do that. Sony is aware of the issue. They have acknowledged it. They are saying that their engineers are looking into it, and apparently they're also saying transactions are still being counted, so you should still collect any sort of coins from any purchases while it was down. But yeah, really bad timing on their end to have this issue actually happen, because some people are saying maybe they're canceling the program, or they took it down intentionally, which is silly to think about because it's a rewards program that's meant to incentivize you to spend money on their storefront. We have to remember, it may seem like a cool, good thing, and it obviously is for a consumer point of view, but they're not doing that stuff out of the kindness of their hearts. They know that you're going to spend more money on the store by using it. So it's not something where they took it down intentionally. It probably cost them a lot of money not having this thing up during what is a very big annual sale. My only issue is, and really this is a big issue, I do not expect them to compensate anybody for this. I would hope that the transactions that anybody had over that time are still counted, but this company is probably not going to, one, extend those sales because they haven't, it's over now, or they're not going to credit any additional coins. I would hope that they'll end up doing that by the time this thing goes up, but it's just another typical like Sony dropping the ball with their back-end issues, which are, certainly a semi-common thing nowadays. Moving on to a new free update coming out very soon for Spider-Man 2 on June 18th, which I say free as in, typical Insomniac fashion. They're adding new suits to the game, so these are completely free coming out June 18th. 4 of these were designed in collaboration with Kid Super. So there's the Metro suit, the Fluoro suit, and then the Motor Chick suit. And then the other 4 suits are Last Stand suit, Into the Spider-Verse, that's the Peter Parker version. There's the animated suit for Miles, and then the Uptown Pride suit as well, which this update is also going to include some stability fixes, and also the option to swap out your parry and traversal abilities from the symbiote to spider arms. So, love to see Insomniac continuing to support this game. If their past releases on PS4, PS5 were any indication, this is going to be a very common thing for the studio, which is always really refreshing considering a lot of games don't necessarily see that kind of output. Now, of course, some of the big news stories from this past week came from Summer Game Fest, where that was on Friday last week, and that was something where that was after LTPS, so we did that evening do an upload talking about LEGO Horizon Adventure, talking about that Phantom Blade Zero trailer, and just general impressions. But over the weekend and going into the weekday, we did know that the press was going to have some hands-on time with LEGO Horizon and also Astrobot, so starting off with Astrobot, we can talk about the press reactions, which have so far been seemingly very positive. I mean, overwhelmingly positive. A lot of people really enjoyed their 45-something minute session with this game, really even comparing it to mainline 3D Mario games. There's talk of Game of the Year discussion for what is a really ambitious 3D platformer, and there's just so much really positive buzz for this game. I will say some of the key things we can point out here is that Team Asobi, which we know are capitalizing on the DualSense even more. One really cool example is that Astro can apparently brush his hands against the wall, which you'll feel in the controller, but you might be able to find a secret passage by feeling a change in the texture, which I love that. That sounds great to hear Team Asobi really exploring DualSense features even more. And there's also difficulty options as well, so that is something where you can absolutely get more challenge out of this game and go through some more difficult platforming sequences, which some of those we're hearing might lead to more obscure PlayStation VIP bots to rescue, because we know there's more than 150 this time around, so we are absolutely going to get more obscure with those references, which I love. And I even love more that they're tied to like really hard levels to get the character that you maybe have never even heard of, or you have heard of, and that's just so much more rewarding to know that it's in the game. So there's a lot that can be said, a lot of people getting some hands-on time with the game, but we'll leave it there for now. I will say it is really interesting seeing so much discussion surrounding how good this game is, or how good it will potentially be, even going as far as saying it's Game of the Year material compared to 3D mainline Mario games, which in a way are very much pinnacles in the 3D platforming landscape. And I'm always somebody that, despite how excited I can get for certain properties, I will always like refrain from saying that, because I simply have not played the game just yet. So I'm not going to go as far as saying like, oh, it's going to be Game of the Year material, because I just haven't played it myself. Even though ironically I have done that in 2022 for every single time we saw more of Stray. Joking, obviously, although it did end up being a beautiful, fantastic game. But the point is, yeah, it just seems like this is very much a test bed for Sony, and it seems more clear when we have that business segment briefing with that one slide showing us the hierarchy of their portfolio, that being tempo titles, games that are going to expand the audience, and games that are a bit more experimental and have a controlled budget that, if they do find an audience and they're successful, we might see them capitalize on it further. That is very much what this game is. I will say my other issue, though, or main issue, would be that we had Rescue Mission. It's a very similar game to this. Like, it just, I think, really illustrates how many people did not play Rescue Mission at all, because we had a full-scale, extremely good platforming Astrobot game, but that maybe illustrates more why this game does need to be 2D. And that does segue nicely into our next news story, which is an answer on if this game is going to have PSVR 2 support, which is a flat-out no and probably not going to happen. So when speaking with Push Square, Team Asobi's head and also the director, Nicolas Duché, did talk about this. So he explained why the game does not have PSVR 2 support, and he says it was never designed for it. He says, and I quote here, "When we talk about VR versus non-VR, for a game like Astro, if you were to make a VR version, it has to be fully designed for that medium. And if it's not a VR version, it has to be fully designed for that medium. Certain games can afford to be hybrid, like first-person games, because there's a closer similarity, but in our case, the design philosophy for both are very, very different. So, it was a decision to expand on the world of Astro's Playroom and bring Astro to the big stage. So from the beginning, that was really our focus." So that is kind of what I was getting at before when I said I don't know what their dev pipeline was for this game, if they are going to maybe offer a VR patch down the road for PSVR 2 support or not, because exactly as Nick is saying, I mean, you have to sort of make the game from the very onset with that in mind. Some games, it's certainly more conducive to it than others, but this is something that's always been well documented in the VR space. If you're going to make a VR game, typically, I mean, it's going to be designed as a VR experience from the very beginning. So that tells me that they're saying outright, we did not make this game with VR in mind. It's simply not coming, which is disappointing. I can completely sympathize with people that did love Rescue Mission so much, and we're really supporting the franchise at its not even a low point, just simply it did not have a chance, right? That's the problem. And I have PSVR 2. I love the headset. I advocate for VR all the time, but this is simply the better outcome, as much as it does suck to hear for VR owners. Even PSVR 2 overall, right? Some are arguing like the headset needs this, but the problem is Astro needs it more. If we want this IP to be big, if we want Sony to invest in this kind of game, this game needs to be 2D. It just has to. With that in mind, I mean, it doesn't rule out that we can get a VR experience for Astro down the road, or other sort of VR games, obviously, but in the case for this particular game, it is only for PlayStation 5 in a 2D format. In other Astrobot news, we can also mention Astro's Playroom, which got a new update for new content in the game, which I was not expecting at all. So there's new trophies, new bots to rescue, also new artifacts as well, which the artifacts are mostly PSVR 2 related, ironically. But it's something where they're trying to tie this in with the upcoming Astrobot game in September. So right now with the new bots, you can only rescue one, which means you can only unlock one trophy. And I assume every month they'll then unlock another one where they're riddle tied to. So you have to like figure out how to unlock and save the bot, and there's going to be 3 total for then unlocking those 3 trophies, and then the 4th one for finding all new bots in the game as well. So I was not expecting any new content for Astro's Playroom at all, so I think that's awesome. More so, it's interesting that we have Lady Maria as the first bot to rescue in Playroom, which I'll tell you, it's getting borderline exhausting with the Bloodborne references. Not so much that Sony's doing them, but the just typical response that the community has with that, because obviously Bloodborne is just this borderline meme at this point. But I don't know, man, it's like, what would you rather Sony do? Not say anything about Bloodborne ever again for 7-8 years, and we would have no indication that they even know that the IP exists? Or would we rather them actually acknowledge it quite often, have this sort of reverence and appreciation for the IP, which, if anything, that is more indicative of them eventually doing something with the game versus nothing at all? Like, you know what I mean? Like, man, it's every single time Bloodborne comes up, it's the immediate, like, oh, Bloodborne, my God, sound the alarm bells. Sony knows what it is. They've always known what it is. What is wrong with people? My God. We'll talk about more Bloodborne later in the show, but it's another one where it's like, man, people just cannot let this thing go. In fairness, there's a reason for that, but I think the references are better than not having anything at all. Now, going back to all the Summer Game Fest announcements and also all the hands-on time that the press had for these games, we can also mention the other very big announcement for opening up the entire live stream. From SIE, they confirmed LEGO Horizon Adventures coming to PS5, PC, Nintendo Switch this holiday season. We also now know that it is partially done in-house with Guerrilla Games, but also co-development with Studio Gobo, where they were confirmed as a co-development partner back in January 2023 on the Horizon franchise. We didn't know at the time what that meant. I remember covering that story, but it kind of came and went because we just didn't really know exactly what that would have meant, because there's so many Horizon projects in the works. We had no idea it was for a LEGO Horizon game, which this game did get some hands-on time as well. So same thing, people got to play like 45 minutes. Also generally very positive. To summarize, what we're hearing there is that the game looks absolutely stunning for a LEGO title, which kind of goes hand in hand with, I guess, Guerrilla, and just how pretty and bright and colorful looking that the Horizon universe can usually look. Combat and stealth are absolutely simplified and very easy to get into, which for a LEGO game makes sense. There's also a fixed camera perspective, and then there's no cross-platform play too, so just a little caveat there. You can do couch co-op or online co-op on that platform that you're choosing to play on, but you can't do, say, PS5 Switch or Switch and PC, something like that, which I think was expected, but maybe not a huge deal breaker. But the other little interesting thing they said is that everything in the game, like from the environments, models, everything is Lego brick. As in, if you had the bricks yourself in real life, you could, in theory, recreate everything that you see in the game, which I always love hearing little, interesting things like that. But more so, I think and you certainly would expect this is the case, but more merchandising. We know Sony's planning on doing that, so I would be shocked otherwise if we don't get more LEGO Horizon sets. The tall neck is like really cool. I loved putting that together. So I would be very upset if we did not at some point get a Thunderjaw. But yeah, it seems like people did genuinely enjoy their time with this game as well, which I think is not too surprising given Horizon is very adaptable. It does look like a really fun LEGO game. Now, obviously, the most surprising aspect of this game announcement for LEGO Horizon Adventures is that they're shipping the game day one on PS5, PC, and also Nintendo Switch this holiday season. So, why is Sony doing this? Well, we do have an answer from Guerrilla Games narrative director James Windler when speaking with various publications at SGF. The simple answer is they want this game to be available for everyone and reach a broad audience. And with the Switch having a more family-friendly audience, it was a really good fit in order to expand. And that's really the only thing that we have so far, which as a separate aside, we did learn that the game has been in development for about 3 years. And I guess how it came to be is that a lot of senior Guerrilla staff were like really big LEGO fanatics, and they've been working on this IP for like 8-10 years, and they just wanted to try something different, have a bit more fun with the IP, maybe something a bit more whimsical. And I guess that's how this game eventually showed up and turned into what it is today. But yeah, going back to the whole Switch thing, it very much was surprising in the moment when you see the trailer debut, and the gut reaction for many, myself included, is, okay, the LEGO license, how much of a role is that playing? And I have no doubt in my mind LEGO probably wants more platforms for this game, but when you consider who's actually making the compromise on this game, is it Sony saying, okay, we'll do Switch, or is it actually LEGO saying, okay, no Xbox? And I'm thinking it's maybe more that when you consider the context of this game, because every single game, every deal, it should always be evaluated on its own for what it is, and this game very much falls in line with the criteria set forth from Sony's business segment briefing, with that one slide with the hierarchy of their portfolio investment. And this game is experimental, it's got a controlled budget, and it's probably meant to reach a wider audience. And Switch arguably is the kind of audience where absolutely you can see some kind of conversion rate for that kind of buyer, maybe wanting to eventually play the main tentpole releases on PlayStation, where that's what this game is. It's not, it's not meant to be a tentpole release, but it certainly got that IP crossover for what is a very simplified version of this universe. And speaking on the whole compromise thing and the irony of them saying that, oh, we want this game to be for everybody, like this immediately goes back to that conversation we again just had about why PlayStation 5 is so successful without true exclusivity, which is modern exclusivity is simply not the other guy. That's all that means, because both Sony and Microsoft, despite Sony having this in fairness reputation of like, okay, if it's Sony, exclusivity, that's what they always want. So, I mean, it's understood, but in the last 5 years for Sony, and more so for Microsoft, they have very much been trying to reach new audiences and ship their games on more platforms, primarily PC, but, a very good Xbox example in this case would be something like Ori, where they let that game go over to Switch as well, right? Why do they put it there but not PlayStation? Because exclusivity, in their view, is not PlayStation, or at least it used to be. They're in a different circumstance nowadays versus Sony. That's why there's still no pressure on Sony's end to ship on Xbox. But yeah, I think, honestly, the compromise probably was on the LEGO side of things. If anything, Sony probably made out on they probably got the better end of the deal on this one. Because that's what they want out of this thing. They don't want to ship it on Xbox. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious if we will see more kind of games like this, because you have to evaluate it on its own. And I'd be curious to know what kind of other games would fall in the spectrum of warranting some kind of Nintendo Switch release. Now, another very big Summer Game Fest announcement was the final trailer for the entire live stream, that being Phantom Blade Zero, which is a PlayStation 5 console exclusive. Not a PS Studios game, but it's been very high profile in that it looks quite nice, sometimes questionable at best in terms of how real is that gameplay. That really was the show closer, and so this was something where this game also had previews the following days of Summer Game Fest, and it does look like a Souls-like. I mean, that's the I guess, easy way to think about it, but the game director did follow up on this, and they want to make it clear that it's not a Souls-like. It might have some similarities by the sheer look of the environments and the feel, but there is going to be multiple difficulty options. There's checkpoints. The enemies don't respawn all the time after you die and things like that. It's meant to be more combo-driven with hectic combat sequences, and the director did also note that the game is not truly exclusive. It's going to be available for PC as well. But as far as like the hands-on time that we're hearing about for this game, it sounds like this too does play very well. In a sense that, like, again, the key takeaway a lot of people had was like, that looks fun, but is that, very scripted gameplay, or, what's the case there? But I mean, considering they did outline there's going to be all these hands-on play sessions for the game, it sounds like it's in a pretty good state right now. So yeah, so far it sounds like Phantom Blade is shaping up to be quite nice. Now, another surprising announcement from Summer Game Fest is Black Myth Wukong, where this game finally has a confirmed release date of August 20th, coming to PS5, PC, and that's actually it for now. And that's the news, because this game was supposed to be multi-platform, but now it's only for PS5 and PC, coming out August 20th. I actually did not notice this during the live stream, but it was something where a few people spotted it, and then asking questions of, what's going on? Did Sony money hat the game? Is there some kind of marketing agreement? But we did find out shortly after on the game's official website that the FAQ says they're trying to optimize the Xbox Series X and S versions to meet their quality standards. So that sounds very familiar to something that happened with Baldur's Gate 3, if you remember, where the Series XS versions were held back, or rather Series S was the bottleneck. So Larian was having trouble getting that game up and running, and I believe it was like the co-op or something, if I remember correctly, but it was a whole ordeal. Microsoft engineers actually also flew out to Larian and to, figure out how to get that version out the door, and, compromises were made, but that was like the core issue. They don't specify here that it is Series S. A lot of people are theorizing that is what's going on there. There actually was a news story about 2 weeks ago. It did not make LTPS at the time, but it was a matter of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. That game also, not quite a bottleneck, but the way they were phrasing this was, Series S, in terms of how much memory's on that system, it's about 25% more than the previous gen for PS4 and Xbox One, so that's how much bigger we were going to make the world, basically, about 25%. So that was kind of a headline at the time as well. But, it's been well documented throughout this generation that Series S, for a lot of studios, they're really hitting a wall on that platform. So it is going to be the lowest common denominator. And at least in the case of the few fringe cases we have had so far, it does amount to sort of indirect console exclusivity, which is not unheard of. I mean, PlayStation 2 was the absolute king for that, for a different reason, primarily being install base, right? So, but that happens. So in the case of like even Phantom Blade Zero, which we just talked about, right? I mean, if that game is ever going to come out to Xbox, it's simply a matter of like, they're targeting PS5 first, depending on studio resources and how much money they have and the head count at the studio. I mean, sometimes it's like, let's just target one platform that's going to get us out the door in the biggest way possible, and then we'll target other platforms down the road. So it is a byproduct in a way that is favoring Sony, and we've seen it before. That's the thing. So I think as this generation presses on, we will see more of that. How much more, I'm not entirely sure, but for games that are maybe going to hit, the sort of ceiling on what these platforms can do, Series S will more than likely be a little bit of a problem. But in other Xbox adjacent news, we can also mention the Xbox Game Showcase on Sunday, which was a very strong live stream, easily one of the company's best in a long time, if not the best. A really diverse lineup of software with a look at gameplay or release windows. I mean, if you're in the Xbox camp, that was a really good live stream. It was really fun to watch. And as we often say on this channel, whether it's Xbox or PlayStation, Nintendo, always worth watching every live stream because there's plenty of third-party announcements in those events. And so what we're going to do here is recap all the third-party announcements from the Xbox Game Showcase. So really it boils down to Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is coming out November 15th this year. So we saw some gameplay for that. Also Atomfall, that's coming out 2025. Of course, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 coming out October 25th. Then there's Claire Obscure Expeditions 33. That was revealed coming out 2025. That was easily my game of the show. That looks amazing. I'm without a doubt like locked into that game. It looked just incredible. Doom the Dark Ages also looked amazing as well, 2025. That's day and date for PS5 as well. Dragon Age The Veilguard, 2024. Fallout 76, Skyline Valley, that's already out. Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn, that's coming out July 18th. Life is Strange, Double Exposure. I love the Life is Strange franchise, so happy to see this coming October 29th. Then Mecha Break, that's coming out 2025. We got gameplay for Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Then Mixtape, that's coming out 2025 as well. Sea of Thieves Season 13, starting July 15th. And then Wu Chang Fallen Feathers coming 2025 as well. These are the only games so far that are like for sure confirmed for PlayStation 5. There might be a few other stragglers for now, but yeah, it's still a lot of good software. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna front. Like, as far as like Xbox first party, there's certainly things there that were pretty high for me, but like, God, Expeditions, what was that? Like, I'm so in. I mean, I get that a lot of studios and publishers have moved away from turn-based, oftentimes to their benefit, but you know, I need turn-based combat to come back. It's really kind of this open landscape. It's really Persona. Like, Persona and Dragon Age sort of have this clear runway for the subgenre. I don't know why some studios are not really exploring this more, like big budget studios, mind you, that have a lot of backing from a major publisher. I don't know. It's like, I think there's still so much more to explore, certainly in the modern landscape. So that game, I think, is at the very top for me. That looked amazing, and I'm always excited for more Life is Strange, so sign me up for that big time. But what we should also mention is Doom the Dark Ages, which is a Bethesda game coming out day and date on PlayStation 5. They did openly put this out there. The rumors were true. And so we do have some words here from the Microsoft CEO of gaming, Phil Spencer, speaking with Ryan McCaffrey of IGN in a separate little conversation off-site. And Phil does explain why they're shipping the game on PlayStation 5. And Phil basically said that Doom has a history on so many platforms, so he thinks it's a franchise that should be available for everyone to play. He said, and I quote, when I met with Marty Stratton a couple of years ago, I asked what he wanted to do, and he said he wanted to sell it on all platforms. Simple as that. Phil then, in that moment, elaborated further, saying that there's still benefits for the Xbox customer, but more games are coming. So he says, and I quote, our commitment to our Xbox customers is that you're going to get the opportunity to buy or subscribe to the game. We are going to support the game on other screens, and you are going to see more of our games on more platforms. And we just see that as a benefit to the franchises that we are building. And we see that from players, and the players love to be able to play. So this pretty much goes back to that initial conversation that we had about this rumor at the time, where I had mentioned I would like to know if this game fell under the category of, you know, Microsoft wanting to ship more games recently, you know, the sort of U-turn they had internally. Is it part of Project Latitude, or does it actually kind of go back to the very fresh post-Bethesda language at the time, which was, we will evaluate games on a case-by-case basis? You know, was it that, or is it a more newer thing? And it sounds like it actually did fall under that case-by-case basis a few years ago now at this point, which, you know, it is something where Phil can be very contradictory and, you know, say things that are completely inaccurate, and we have emails certainly suggesting that they've, you know, pulled exclusivity or walked into Arcane and said, hey, no Redfall PS5, but this one certainly does sound like he's being truthful, as in it was a case-by-case basis, because you would also assume, based on the development timeline, I mean, knowing that the game is going to be ready to ship day one on PS5, if they had to start working on the PS5 version, you know, within the last 6 months or so, you could argue that that was not going to be possible to ship day and date, right? So at least in that sense, I would assume Phil is being truthful, and more so putting it out there that yes, more games are coming, as we've seen plenty of rumors suggest so far. Next up, let's go over this Bloodborne news story. So recently, PC Gamer was speaking with From Software's president, Hidetaka Miyazaki, covering the upcoming Shadow of the Erdtree expansion, and they asked him straight up if he personally would like to see a Bloodborne PC port, and Miyazaki responded with, and I quote here, I know for a fact these guys want a Bloodborne PC port. He's referring to FromSoft's producer and interpreter sitting right there in the conference room near him, but he goes on and says, if I say I want one, I'll get in trouble as well, but it's nothing I'm opposed to. Obviously, as one of the creators of Bloodborne, my personal, pure, honest opinion is I'd love more players to be able to enjoy it, especially a game that is now coming of age, one of those games of the past that gets lost on older hardware. I think any game like that, it'd be nice to have an opportunity for more players to be able to experience that and relive this relic of the past. So as far as I'm concerned, that's definitely not something I'd be opposed to. So this to me reads as a very open, honest opinion in the sense that he's not only being truthful, but it's also a matter of like, yes, the IP holder, it's all, the ball's in their court, right? Because Sony does own the IP. If they want to do a PC or a PS5 version, it's up to them. And it's also him low-key saying like, and we all knew this already, but they're not working on the franchise actively right now. It's not happening as far as we know. But that's always been the really weird spot that this franchise has had, and especially with FromSoft, right? Because with some fans, I mean, they want FromSoft to actually touch this property. If Sony does go off and do something with it, they probably would have to give this to a different studio, which we saw with the Demon's Souls remake. FromSoft might, at the very minimum, play some kind of advisory role on the entire project, but for the most part, I mean, Sony would have to find somebody else to go off and do this. Not to say that there's also, like, it would never happen again that FromSoft and Sony could partner on another, like, let's say, at least console exclusive. I don't think that's entirely impossible, but FromSoft nowadays is a lot different to where they were 10 years ago, so that might be a more costly endeavor on Sony's end to try and work out some kind of agreement in that sense. But as far as Bloodborne goes, right, I mean, feeding into the memes and the rumors that aren't actually real rumors because there's no credibility backing any of them, I mean, it's still like such a weird, very strange, mind-blowing thing that they're not doing it just yet. I mean, I think it's almost a guarantee that it's inevitable. I'm just surprised it hasn't happened just yet. I mean, they're clearly going to do it at some point, but it's just a really baffling thing that it hasn't happened yet, because Sony doesn't need FromSoft to go off and do it, obviously. We know they're shipping PC games, and if they do that, by association, you're going to have an updated console version. And the game did very well. We saw from the Insomniac breach, it sold a lot of copies, millions. It was up there on the most sold for PlayStation Studio games, or just Sony-owned IP in general. So I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but for now, that's the most up-to-date language, which from FromSoft, as a creator, yeah, they're always going to want to see this stuff on as many platforms as possible. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or X, and if you'd like to win a $10 PSN code, it is so simple. We do this every single week on Let's Talk PlayStation. Follow the link down below, enter the Gleam giveaway, and supporting this channel, a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week, because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are some of the news stories from this past week that I wanted to talk about with you all, and we were again very busy this past week. So last Friday after LTPS was the Summer Game Fest reactions impressions. Then Tuesday we had a very thorough deep dive conversation on Sony's 2025 roadmap, how they announce games, their lack of a showcase, what's going on there. So we really get into the nitty gritty of that. And then Wednesday was the first look at the new PS2 emulator for PS4 and PS5. And then going into next week, we might have again a 2 upload scenario. Not sure if it's going to be something where one is actually on Sunday, then the typical Tuesday upload might be Monday, Tuesday, depends on how I work out with all that, but that's what's going on there. And then a lot of you probably already saw this, but starting a new PlayStation-centric podcast with John from Spawnwave called Click R3, a PlayStation podcast. That one is going to be bi-weekly, and it's going to be live as well, so we'll be able to take in viewer questions, see the chat, and definitely a different format to our typical solo shows, being able to bounce topics off each other and things like that. So yeah, that'll be bi-weekly live. Right now we're only doing it pre-recorded so we can kind of get settled in. So we did episode 1. I'll leave that link down below. And yeah, I think that about wraps it up. So thank you so much for watching. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.